between zero publications to getting a $1 million grant in 3 years was through a lot of self-development and also finding the right skills to work on. I really wanted to help people and the impact. So I have a goal of helping millions of patients. And if I see a patient one at a time, I would never reach that goal. So I thought research would be the next thing, where if I publish a paper, maybe I can help hundreds and thousands of patients. But then the next level was I can help people write research paper and publish their work. That means it will be 1,000 times 1,000, then it will be 1,000,000 patients.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. We have such a wonderful guest with us today. We have Dr. Jia. She is a nephrologist and she is a researcher, and she helps clinicians to improve their publications in order to achieve their academic goals and also their authority in science. So, Dr. Jia, thank you so much for coming to the channel today.
My pleasure. It's so good being on your channel, Dr. Rigard.
Yes, so I would love if you could share your story from where you started and how you got to where you're at today.
During residency, I was involved with some quality improvement projects and thought they were fun, but could never really get them published because looking back, it wasn't designed properly. But it got me into thinking more, perhaps I need to do more skills and learning about research. And I decided when I joined fellowship, I took a research path and did my master's during that time. It was a great learning process. Unfortunately, by the time I completed my training, I had zero publications. And when you have zero publications, you can't really get a research type of job. So that means you can probably become an academic clinician. You get 90% of clinical time. That means you have to see a lot of patients, but there's no time to actually do any research thinking or science or writing. And so I was struggling, and fortunately, by some miracle, in my current position, they decided to invest in me and said, okay, I'll give you 50% of protected time to do some research. And I felt so happy and indebted. In fact, I felt like it was such a big opportunity that I would never let go, and told myself, I need to prove that I'm worth investing. And so for the next 2 years, it was really working on improving my writing, improving my skills, and we were able to publish 14 papers within 2 years. And partly it was COVID and a lot of activity happening during that time. And that led to a different trajectory where I was able to write a grant and got a close to $1 million grant. So between zero publications to getting a $1 million grant in 3 years was through a lot of self-development and also finding the right skills to work on. So that's where I am. And because of that learning, over that intense learning period, I realized that many clinicians never had the training to write. We were taught how to do research, but there was a lot of gaps. How to write, how to disseminate the paper, how to read the paper. And when you go into master's program, what happens is they go too deep. So they don't give you the framework first. They say, oh, let's learn about this, the statistics. Let's learn about that, something else. And it was never connected. It was only when I started doing my own research, then I realized, oh, that is why we learned that lecture 2 years ago. So now my goal is more like, let me create a structure and a foundation first for people who want to even learn about science so that they can start having a framework. And as their interest is stronger, then we can start building the building blocks within a framework.
And there's so many people, including myself, when we feel like we have to be in clinic or researching where we don't have enough time to do both. And it seems like it becomes so overwhelming to even conceptualize. So would you mind sharing kind of the things that, during your master's program, or I know it seems like you're creating the things that years ago would have been great in order to help you to have created those publications during your master's program. Can you share with us what kind of things would have been helpful at that time?
I think what would have been helpful was knowing how what we learn is going to be useful later, the application of it. So I didn't realize, I think what I would done differently is to actually start with a research paper and show them, okay, this is a research paper, and these are the components that all the words, these are all the words you need to understand, and each one has a whole separate module and course. And now then I can like, oh, I am all learning to create this whole research project, and this is the final product. And using the paper as the final product and reverse engineer it would have allowed me to understand, oh, that is why I need to learn this so that I can get to this section of the research paper. I think that would have been a lot more helpful than going so deep into the deep end of the research modules.
How does that apply to when you're structuring your research proposals?
Research is very methodological. So basically, you need to do a certain thing first. You need to choose the right outcome. It's not like you can do it and see what happens. You have to design a project first. If not, they would say it's not valid. They say you can fudge with the results. So there's a lot of planning ahead of time. So knowing all the different structure so that you can plan properly. If not, you're going to waste a lot of time. You're going to do a 2-year project and the reviewer is going to say, oh, it's not good enough. And your 2-year worth of work gets wasted. And paper rejection is one of the biggest things we encounter. But if you plan it right, then the chance of acceptance is much higher. So having a structure ahead of time is really important.
And I think about now, we live in an information age, right? Where we have, or I don't even know if it's information age as much as it is data age. We have a lot of things that are collected, but without that end goal in mind, it just becomes this EHR that's overwhelming, right? There's so many data points, but are they useful? And when it comes to things that are accepted as useful, and then years later we find, oh, actually that outcome isn't as useful as we thought. It was just measurable, and we really have all this evidence that's not really based off of anything meaningful. Can you share kind of your approach to your specific research, and how do people, when it comes to exploring things that have been done in the past, right? How do you use your keen eye to say that needs to be redone?
So to your point, like data and information, they are, it doesn't speak for itself. Data are just numbers. And in research paper, you actually need to tell a story. And we actually have to start from that in mind. Like what are we trying to solve? What is the message we're going to give? We are not going to predict the future, but at least we are trying to answer and solve the problem. And so that is where I start when I read a paper. I want to see what the researcher is trying to solve. What is their question? So the research question is really important. And the research question must be meaningful. Just because they say, I want to look for data and the data doesn't exist, to me, that's not important. I want to know what is the existing problem in that field and how are the researchers trying to figure out a way to solve that issue. If they lay that out properly, this is the problem, and this is my research to solve that problem, at least I know they're in the right heart. Then once we get to that place, then we can start looking at the data and statistics. Okay, did they use the right method to answer this question? Just because they have this question doesn't mean that you're using the right method. So that itself, knowing the right method is a skill building process where we have to learn what method, study design and data. But most important, where the heart comes from, the question, the problem, and what we are doing to solve the problem.
And I find that there's a lot of kind of hiccups or obstacles that mentally people have, right? When I think about research, it seems so intense, and is it worth it? And I hear a lot of people shy away from it. Can you share what helped you to say, I really want to go this route?
I really wanted to help people and the impact. So I shared this with you before. I have a goal of helping millions of patients. And if I see a patient one at a time, I will never reach that goal. So I thought research would be the next thing, where if I publish a paper, maybe I can help hundreds and thousands of patients. But then the next level was, if I can help people write research paper and publish their work, that means it would be 1,000 times 1,000, then it would be 1,000,000 patient. So that was kind of the big goal. And because the goal was big, I felt like all the obstacles and the learning process, even though it was difficult, it was worth doing because it's such a small obstacle to it compared to the goal.
Mm, yeah. And I think that it sounds like, when I hear feedback and what people focus on when we're told the numbers of publications that we need, or we're told all of these external things without the quality to surround it, without the context of, but these papers and the things that are meaningful for you,
Mhm.
and it comes to, you're leaning into things that are associated with a lot of rejection or a lot of patience, which our society is learning, I think, that we need to improve our patients because we have a lot of things that are quick fixes, but then our outcomes aren't as good as they could be if we really kind of dug deeper and had something that might take longer, but also gives us more long-term successful outcomes. So if a person is in our society, which is quick pace, and they're thinking, how can I kind of shift gears and really embrace what to expect from that research trajectory? How can they equip themselves with like the personal tools to really put on that framework of, I might face a lot of rejection, this might take a long time? What has helped you?
I would say that two things. One is some reality check that rejection has two reasons. One is you're probably not good enough. And sometimes we use a lot of, no, you're definitely good enough. Sometimes we actually have to step back. Maybe my skill is not good enough. If paper rejection could be the writing is not good enough. Maybe it is the skills and your methods is not good enough. So you may have to go back and learn the skills. How do I conduct a good study question? How do I design a study better? How do I make sure I get the data properly? So there's a lot of skill building because research is a completely different field. And just because you were in medicine doesn't mean that you automatically can do research.
Mhm.
So that is the first thing is sometimes we have to step back and build on the skills. And second is the persistence and resilience. Rejection is part of research because 80% of papers get rejected. And so if you are not pushing enough, or if you keep getting acceptance, you're probably not aiming high enough. So you're probably only going for the low tier journal who's going to take anybody's paper. So if you are pushing yourself enough, that means you're going higher and higher and higher. And you're going to get a lot more rejection, but at least you are improving. I'm like aiming for the next level. So that is kind of my 2 cents about going through the difficulties and overcoming rejection.
I love that reframe, right? If I shoot and I fail, I knew I shot higher, right? If I keep succeeding, that means maybe I'm not shooting high enough.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that. And I also, we talked about a little bit about terms, right? When it comes to research terms, and all of a sudden you're learning a new language. So I'm in a course right now for the basics of bioinformatics. I was so delighted for the teacher to just call it out, like, you're going to feel like you're learning a new language. You will be frustrated. Like, let's set the expectation that there's a little bit of a learning curve. You might feel frustrated before you get comfortable or just comfortable with the discomfort. Is that kind of how it's been for you?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad your lecturer did that for you.
Mhm.
The definition is the most basic of basic is the first thing that I think we should focus on. Instead of going into all the fancy statistics, let's just start with what measurement means, what outcomes mean. Like look at the basic, not even the statistic dictionary, look at the regular English dictionary to understand what that word means. And sometimes just by understanding the origins of the word, it helps you understand, oh, that is why they did that. Because we like to use words in different contexts, but sometimes if you just go back to basic, it will make it so much easier. So I'm glad your professor took the time and said, okay, it's a new language. Let us learn the new words. Then once you learn the word, you have the language, then you can start communicating in science. So I love that.
And it's awesome because also this course for people that need to learn, I think having someone to help you guide is essential, especially if we are used to knowing like we're used to excelling, right? This is something maybe it doesn't come natural. This is a new language. And our course even cuts you, it doesn't allow you to unlock the next module, knowing that you are likely to overwhelm yourself. So it like really creates that structure with you, which is like, could be frustrating, but also very relieving, right? It takes away that control from you to say, you're going to learn it at our pace, because we know from experience using their research that people who tried to go too quickly ended up doing worse. So they've created, you know, their experience from having years and years of students to say, this is the good pace for most students, and we're going to go there, because I'm sure they got millions of questions if people were trying to skip a few steps ahead.
Right. And I think physicians, we're impatient, and so we want to go to the fancy stuff. We always like the complex stuff, but you're right. Sometimes we need somebody to hold us back. Like, oh, don't go too fast. You need to understand the basics first.
And I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that what we're learning now when it comes to what we have in medicine is we do need to go back to the basics when it comes to questioning things that we've held at our standards for such a long period of time, right? Because I think what's often we're taught and we kind of take it as truth, then years later when we find out like, oh, there were some issues in the way that research was crafted, well, as a researcher, you might be able to identify that based off your tools, even if it's in a different field like nephrology. You can still apply those basic concepts to the research that was done in a different niche.
Right, absolutely. Yes, I agree.
That's awesome. And I really valued, again, I think we can repeat it because you have created such valuable resources for people. And I would love for you to share again kind of your vision for how when you went from being able to treat one person to now what you've created in order to help so many others.
So yes, so as I mentioned, my goal is to help 1 million patients, and my research in helping people to publish their work. But what I realized is, as I'm in this journey, clinicians are expected to publish papers, but they're really never given the proper training unless you're in a research path. But there's a whole group of people that have been neglected and abandoned. I would say almost abandoned, because they are expected to publish work, scholarly activity. They say you have to do something. If not, you don't get promoted. These are the people who are there, who are willing to get a lower pay and not go to private practice so that they can care for patients, but yet they were never given the opportunity to learn how to do the right things, like how to write a paper, how do you plan a project, how do you even talk to the statistician. Even all these basic things are actually not that basic. It's a new skill. So my goal is to fill in that gap, to take away, not let the clinician feel abandoned. Here, this is the basics of basics. How to read a paper. What do these terms mean? How do you do a journal club? Because we tell residents do journal club, but never teach them what these words mean. And everybody gets bored in class because it's just a bunch of words and words on PowerPoint, but nobody really knows what discussion to be made. So I want to provide that basic, so that when we do evidence-based medicine, when we even talk about research, you don't even have to do research. We need some basic understanding, and that itself will make people understand, appreciate science a lot more. Like, these things are meant to help patient and move patient forward.
Can you share your resources that you've created?
So the best way is to start with my YouTube channel, because I have a lot of free resources there. I also have a blueprint, idea to paper blueprint, for people who are interested, maybe what research, what sort of steps, what are the 7 steps, so that you can see, oh, that is it too much, oh, actually something I can maybe start thinking about to get started. If you want to work more with me, then I actually do have online courses, some on foundational research, introduction to data and statistics, and another one for people who have done the project but now need to get to the finish line, which is how to write a paper, how do you navigate publication process. So this is a whole separate course, but a whole lesson by itself, because that is a part that many institutions don't teach.
Really value everything that you've created and sharing your story. And is there anything else that you would like to leave the audience with today?
One is sometimes look at your career, not in a short term. So we may think doing an extra course here and there or extra lesson is not worth it. But if you think about your trajectory of your career is a 30 or 40-year career, and sometimes taking a step back and saying, you know what, I need to build some skills that is worth doing. And my second tip is never build the skill for your current job. Always build the skill for your next position, because people will only choose a leader who have that skill. They are not going to choose an average. Everybody has the same skill. They are not going to choose you. So you need to be different by building skill for the next level. So that is my kind of general advice. So it doesn't matter it's research skill or medicine skill or management skill, any skill, always aim for the higher level. That is how you move to the next level of career.
Yeah, it's so valuable too, especially when we're learning the skills. I feel like having that pull forward and having that vision, because I will say when I stripped myself of all of the identities and had no idea where I was going, I felt that left me I was all over, I felt all over, which was an important part of my journey to figure out and try new things, like what is going to stick. But it made it hard for me to get clear on what boundaries I needed to create and what things I needed to say yes to, what things I needed to say no to, because I didn't really have a vision of where I needed to go. And I kind of felt like even having kind of an outline of what that vision could look like has really helped me to stay more focused and kind of come back in and pull it back in together. But absolutely would agree with you. And I think we can be more intentional and then also have some flexibility in that.
Right. Both, right. Structure and be flexible that we can pivot anytime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. And where can people connect with you?
So I think the easiest way is through YouTube. My YouTube channel is PublishedMD, and there you can find a lot of free resources. I do have some are more informational, like how do you start a research project? Some are for writing tips. Some are just learning about stories like from you, Dr. Rigert, journey of people going through science and medicine and trauma and learning through it. So these are the things I love to share with your audience as well.
That's beautiful. I love your YouTube channel. And of course, we will make sure to link it down below. And thank you, Dr. Jia, for being here and sharing your story as well as your insights.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Take care.
Take care, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.